Hey folks, welcome back to Tech Talk Education. I want to start a new section of movies that talk about Metasploitable 2. There's a company called Rapid7 that has a product, it's a very good product, it's called Metasploit, and it's super wonderful to try and learn and use. They have invented a very unsecure product that you can use for testing your cybersecurity skills, and it is called Metasploitable. Now there's two versions. There's a Metasploitable 2 and a Metasploitable 3, and in this series of videos I want to walk you through using Metasploitable 2 to learn more cybersecurity skills. So we're going to install Metasploitable 2, and then we're going to go through the very first exercise. This should be a lot of fun. It's a really interesting product. Let's get started. So as we talked about before, the company that manufactures Metasploitable 2 is called Rapid7, and they are responsible for writing a very good piece of software called Metasploit. And we need to go through some Metasploit and learn how to use it. It's a really cool product. There's a lot to know about it. But in this case, what they have done is they have created a distinctly unsecure or insecure, I don't know how you would phrase that, version of Ubuntu, and it's loaded with different software that is unsecure, and it's called Metasploitable 2. Now there's two of these. There's a Metasploitable 3 as well. I have a movie that I recorded previously on using Metasploitable 3. In fact, I have a couple of movies that I've done using that. But in this case, what we're talking about is Metasploitable 2. Now you can see that I've done a Google search for it here, and there it is right there. I'm going to click on this. And one of the things that I want to point out to you is that it's available from SourceForge right here. If you click this URL, you can go to SourceForge and get this. But you can also get a virtual machine, and they're talking about it right here. So you can download a Metasploitable virtual machine. I'm not a big fan of this virtual machine because it doesn't include a couple of things that I might not be interested in using. Or what I mean to say is that I am interested in using. So I'm going to go with the standard Metasploitable 2 and show you where to download it. I'm going to get it from SourceForge. If I click this information, rapid7.com, I have to fill out a form to get it. I don't really need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just click the SourceForge link and then click download and get it. Now I already have it, so I don't need to go through this, but I did want to show you how to do this. If I did download it, or if you are going to download it, what I would do is put it in a folder and save it for later in case you need to blow away your VirtualBox instance and then recreate it. And that's what I've done. And I always teach my students to create a folder called software and then delineate the software, like in case of Linux, all different distros of Linux, or Windows, or in this case Metasploitable, something like that. Create folders that designate different areas where you can store software so that you can get it back later on. But that's how you get Metasploitable. Okay, now you can see here that I have downloaded the file. I've got my Windows File Explorer open here, and I've downloaded the file. It's a zip file, and I'm going to go ahead and unzip it. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I deleted this so I could record this class. Now I need to recreate the file that I need. It's not there. It's inside this folder here, but it doesn't show up because I deleted that file. So let's recreate that. So what I'm going to do is right click the zip file. I'm in Windows 11 and select more options. I'm going to do 7-zip extract here. Now I understand that Windows 11 Update allows you to Windows 11 Update will natively support 7-zip files, so there may not be a need to install 7-zip anymore. I don't know if that's true just yet or not. And this really isn't a zip file per se, a 7-zip file. It would say 7Z if it was a 7-zip file, but this says it's a zip file. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I've unzipped it, and now what I do is I go into this folder, Metasploitable 2 Linux, and I can see this blue box right here, and that is what we're after. That's what we need to install when we're going to install Metasploitable version 2. Now this is a VMDK. It stands for Virtual Machine Disk. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the process of installing this. It is not as rigorous as installing something like pfSense, and it's also not as easy as installing something like Kali Linux. It's somewhere in between. So we have to go through a little bit extra step just to get Metasploitable 2 to install for us, but it's not bad. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up VirtualBox. Alright, here's VirtualBox. So the first thing you do is you click the new button, the little gear wheel here, a blue gear, and I'm going to tell it that this is Metasploitable 2. And it's spelled Metasploitable 2. I'm going to put it in a special area where I'm keeping all my VMs, and I'm keeping them on the D drive. I've got VirtualBox VMs, and I've already got a Metasploitable 2 folder created because I have been using it up to now. I'm going to just select that folder because it's empty right now. I deleted the machine so that I can show you this. Now this is Ubuntu Linux, so I don't have an ISO image. What I have is a VMDK. This is Ubuntu Linux, so I'm just going to select Linux and let it default to Oracle. It really doesn't matter. Although you could come down here, you have a bunch of versions of Ubuntu to pick from. You could just pick native Ubuntu 64, that would be fine. And then click Next. 2048 meg of RAM is fine, and 1 CPU of processing is fine. I might jack that up to 2 because my machine can support that. But in this case, it's not really needed. You're not going to directly interact with Metasploitable at all. What you're going to do is get at it from Kali. Nevertheless, give it whatever you can. I understand that some people have machines that aren't running as much RAM or as much CPU power. Whatever you can spare there is great. I'm going to go with the 2 gig of RAM and 2 CPUs and click Next. Now this is where you select the existing VM disk file, the VMDK, and you do it right here. You select this guy right here, and then you click the arrow here, and you add, and you point to the software folder. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to Software, Linux, Metasploitable, and open this folder, and there's that blue Metasploitable VMDK. That's what we want. So we've got that, and then I'll click Choose. Okay, I click Next, and then I've got a summary screen here, and I click Finish. So the first part is done. We have Metasploitable 2 ready to go. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to look at the settings. Now I am using a virtualized ethical hacking lab, so I have pfSense installed here, and if you'd like to know how to do that, I have videos that walk you through that. But you can see here that this is using the adapter intnet here, and then my adapter number 1 in pfSense is using NAT, and the second adapter is using intnet. We want to stay on the intnet network. Kali Linux is using intnet, and I'm going to make Metasploitable, which currently is set for NAT, use intnet as well. So I'll click Settings. I'll go to Network. In fact, I'm going to go through all of this and make sure everything's correct. I'm going to enable bidirectional here. I'm going to look at the system. I'm going to get rid of the floppy drive. I do not know why Oracle insists on making the floppy drive the default boot, but it shouldn't. I'm going to check my processor. Indeed, I have 2 selected. By the way, if you see these fixtures enabled, just stick with it. I don't check them. I don't uncheck them. If they're enabled, I go ahead and let them do it. This is my display. I don't have anything I care about here. Here's my storage. I don't have anything I necessarily care about here. You'll notice that the CD-ROM emulation here is empty. Why is that? Because we're using a VMDK. It's already been installed. All we're doing is configuring some of the properties. I really don't need audio. I'm going to uncheck that because I don't care about audio in Metasploitable 2. Network we've already fiddled around with. Oh, I lied to you. I'm going to select intnet. Now let me take just a minute and let you know that when you select network here and you click this drop down and you select internal network, it defaults to intnet. That's the phrase that it puts in there, and that's fine by me. You could create another phrase if you wanted to. I think it would just actually probably do more to confuse you than anything, so I've learned that I just stick with intnet. Serial ports I don't care about, and USB I'm going to leave defaulted to USB 2. The truth is that you will likely not use USB very much when you're working in something like Metasploitable or Kali Linux. But if you do, Metasploitable 2, USB 2 is there for you, and you can use it if you need to. I'm going to click OK. All right, we're all ready to start this now. But before I do that, I want to make sure that in my case, because I have pfSense, I have Kali, and I have Metasploitable, I'm running this in a virtualized ethical hacking lab for which I have recorded movies for you previously. You can go look at those and see how to create such a lab. I'm going to start pfSense first, then Kali, then Metasploitable. So I'm going to pause the movie while I get those started because they take a while to boot up. Okay, you can see here that I have pfSense running on the right-hand side. I have Metasploitable running on the left-hand side. I'm going to minimize pfSense, but I'm going to leave it running. And in Metasploitable, I want you to be aware that you see this little thing here where it says Write Control. Some windows, when you click into them, will not release your mouse. And you will see this as you're going through the VirtualBox installation of a file. It'll come up and give you a warning and saying, hey, I have mouse, whatever, and keyboard. And you just want to turn those off. You know about it. You don't need it to warn you that it's going to do that. But what you do get is if I click inside here to go into the Metasploitable 2 window here, now I have to hit my right control button. It's my right control, not my left, just my right control. I tap that and now I'm back out. So that's what it's warning you about when it's saying that it's intercepting mouse and intercepting keyboard. You can close those warnings. You don't need to know about them anymore because now you know, hey, if I get into Metasploitable 2 and I need to get back out, I've got to hit the right control key to get out. Some virtualized apps do that, some do not. So it's just, you're just going to have to find out, and if you go ahead and click into somewhere and you're like, hey, I can't get my mouse back, hit your right control key and it'll release it. This is the case here. Now let's do just a couple of things with Metasploitable 2 to start with. So you can see here on the screen it says log in with MSF admin. What do they mean by that? Well, they mean that your password, your username is Metasploit Framework admin, enter Metasploit Framework admin. Now remember that in Linux you do not see any passwords, so don't enter it in twice. I just got done teaching a class to a couple of teachers where the one teacher didn't understand that she could not see the password, and so she was keying in her password 2 or 3 times thinking that she had not done it. Don't do that. Linux does not show you your password. You just got to rely on it, and if it fails, it'll say, hey, your password is incorrect. Now, the only reason I did that was to show you that we're able to log in here. I am root at Metasploitable 2 here, and if I want to, I can get my IP address by typing in ifconfig, and it'll yield the IP address to me. There it is, 192.168.1.103, and you'll need to write down that address because you'll need to be using it later on. So you may not get that address. I have no idea what your network looks like, but write down that address where it says ETH0, INET address 192.168.1.103. You've got to write down that address so that you know it. In this case, I don't really need it. I'm just going to go ahead and log clear out. I'm going to type in the logout command and log out of Metasploitable because we're going to do everything from Kali, not from Metasploitable. So then I hit my right control to get out of the window and minimize it. Okay, first thing I want to do is I want to show you a very cool command here. Let me shape this window a little bit so it's not quite in your way like that. And I want to go ahead and look for and see if I can find that same IP address on the network. I want to show you a really cool command. It's sudo, which means that you're going to run it as root, and then we're going to run netdiscover. This is quite the little command. I really like it because what it does is it goes out and scours the network to see if it can find other IP addresses that are on the network. And sure enough, there is 1.103 and it shows up. And you can look at the top here at the top of the screen and you can see that it's going through other addresses. But since we know that there's only the 2 devices on this little ethical hacking lab, I just write down 1.103 and hit a Control-C to get out of the program and clear the screen. Okay, now we have that. Now we're ready to go ahead and do some work involving Metasploitable. Now, I think that the first thing that we should do is we should try using Nmap to figure out what is on that computer. And there's a pretty cool command we can use. Nmap's a very, very cool tool. It's one of the big 5 that you should be aware of. They are Nmap, Burp Suite, Wireshark, Metasploit, and I would take a definite look at Ettercap. Ettercap's very cool as well. There are lots of other tools in Kali, so I'm not saying those are everything and a bag of chips, but I am saying that those are the pretty definitive apps that you can use in your Kali work. So let's try some Nmap. So I'm going to do a sudo nmap, and I'm going to do a tac sv tac p tac, which tells it that it's going to do all of the ports, and I'll talk about these switches here in a minute. Tac on for normal. I'm going to give it a file name, so this is going to be my Metasploitable dump. This is too big of a file name, but that's okay. And then I'm going to type in 192.168.1.103. What is this command doing? Well, we're saying that we're going to execute Nmap. As you go through your cybersecurity practice and you're learning more about cybersecurity and you're using Kali, 90% of what you do is going to happen at the terminal window. There are some apps that you use, like Burp Suite's a full-on app. So, even then you might wind up using the terminal for some things. But the terminal is very useful, and you do a lot of your work inside the Linux terminal. So in this case, we're invoking Nmap as root. tac sv means that we want to get the version number of all of the software that is on Metasploitable. Now this is really cool because what it's going to do is return back to you the version number of any products that it finds running on Metasploitable 2 and tell you what version they are. And this is handy because then you can go out and look and see if there are vulnerabilities associated with that particular version of software. tac p tac means go through all of the ports, 0 through 65,535. Hit them all. Find out if any of them are open. Even if we're in the upper stratosphere of the ports, tell us if there's a port that's open. taco means that we're going to output to a file, and the n means normal. And then the file name is metasploitable_dump. I might change that to metadump. I don't want to type out Metasploitable all the time like that, so I'll just do it that way because I know what it is. And then you type in the IP address of where the Metasploitable box is at. So we hit enter. This will take a minute to get all the information. I will probably put you on hold while this thing is churning away. Okay, so we're all done, and I'm scrolling up through here and looking. And we see that we've got a bunch of ports that are open. Let me go through this output just real quickly. So we're going to deal with this guy after a while. This is really fun. This is something where I was talking about the version number of software. I'm going to do a movie on this so you can go through this because this is a pretty fun exploit here. But you can see that we have port 21 open, which is for FTP. Not a good idea. SSH is open, and it's using OpenSSH. We've got Telnet open, which is very, very bad. SMTP for email is open. DNS is open. Port 80 for HTTP for web requests for websites is open. And we see here that it's running Apache web server version 2.2.8 on port 80. That might be pretty interesting to us. Remote procedure called bind is open. NetBIOS, which is a Microsoft thing, is open, and it's running Samba, which is a way to do file sharing. And so that is open for us, and we have a name of workgroup, which is the default NetBIOS name in Microsoft. So that could be interesting for us to try to hack. And in fact, there's 2 ports, port 139 and port 445. We have remote shell open here. We have login open here. We have TCP wrapped open here, Java, and so forth. MySQL. There's a port, FTP port 2121, which is using a different version of FTP software, Pro FTPD 1.3.1. Oh my goodness, PostgreSQL. We've got MySQL. We've got VNC running, which is a remote desktop type thing. Internet Relay Chat is open. Unreal Chat, HTTP 8180 is open. And this thing is running Apache Tomcat, which is a Java server. And so there's a lot of stuff happening here, a lot of files that are open. So there's a lot going on here. We've even got some upper level files that are running here. Now, the thing that we want to pay attention to today, and oh, by the way, I should show you how this shows up as a file. If I do an ls here, and I probably should have put this in a different folder, you can see here that I have a file here. It's called metadump. That's the one that we created when we did our Nmap download. Probably should have taken and put that into a documents folder where I can work on things some more. So let me do that. Let me show you how we're going to do that. So what we'll do is we'll create a folder inside our documents folder. I could do this right from where I'm at Kali Home, but let me show you how we're going to get there and do what we're going to do. So I'm going to change directories into documents. Then I'm going to clear the screen. Then I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it Meta for Metasploitable. So I'm going to make a directory called Meta. I'm going to keep it lowercase. I want you to know that when you're working at Kali, the folders that come with Kali are all proper case, so you have to be aware of that because Linux is case sensitive. So when you type in the word documents, it's going to show up. You need to type in a cap D. But in this case, I'm going to do a lowercase m for Meta so that I know that I'm the one that created that folder. So I hit enter. If I do an ls now, I see that the Meta folder is sitting out there. I'm going to go back to the root. So the main way that I can do that is cd space ... or I could just do a cd enter and it'll take me back to the root either way. Now what I want to do is I want to move this file. You can see it sitting there. It's called metadump. I want to take this file and I want to move it to documents meta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the move command. So move is mv, and I want to move meta underscore dump to documents / meta, like that, and hit enter. Boom. Let's go see if it made it there. cd to documents / meta. ls. There it is. So now we've got this in an area where we can work with it on its lonesome. It's not anywhere where there's a bunch of other files or folders or whatever. And if you watch other influencers on YouTube and they walk you through doing this stuff, you'll find that 98% of the time they've created these different things that they're doing in different folders so they can keep track of what's going on. So I think it's a pretty good idea. Now let's go ahead and cat meta underscore dump. So cat means print out, show me what you have. And the only reason I'm doing this is to show you that Mmap did indeed write this out to a file. Why is this useful? Well, suppose that you're doing a long-range hacking effort and you've run an Mmap scan and you've got all that. Let's just save it, and now we can use it later and we don't have to go rerun the Nmap scan. So that's why it's really cool. Now I want to draw your attention to some ports here that are very, very important. This is going to be our first little section working in Metasploit. We are concerned about port 512, which is called exec, and it's using what is called remote shell. Then there is port 513, and it is using OpenBSD R login, remote login. And then we have port 514 open, and it doesn't have a name here. But now these are called the R services. And it means that these services are active on this computer. Now you should know that these are old. These are old services, and it's not very good that they're actually running here. This is actually old Unix stuff. Back even before Linux was thought of, Unix invented this way to be able to remotely connect to another computer, and it was called R shell. Well, the idea is really solid, but it's unsecure. And so what happened was SSH, Secure Shell, was born. And so now we can use Secure Shell to get into machines and maybe have a better chance of us having a secure session. But in this case, we're pretty loosey-goosey here. This is not secure. Now what we have to do in order to be able to utilize this is we need to install some software. But before we do that, I want to show you a website that you should go consult. So I'm going to bring up Firefox. And I want to show you the IBM website. I don't normally go to IBM for much. Used to work on IBM mainframes and stuff like that. IBM has been a huge player in the technology industry for a long, long time. But the thing that you should know is that they have a Unix version here called AIX. And so they have a bunch of pages out here that work to show you what's going on with different Unix commands. So they have a really good page here for all of this stuff, for remote exec, for rlogin, for rshell, and some others. And so I wanted to show this to you because these are really good to learn about what's happening with this protocol. The main thing that I want to point out to you is that there are two things going on here. If I scroll down through here, you can see that it's using what is called etc hosts.equiv, or it's using $home.rhost. Now what does that mean? Well, it means that if we go out to Metasploit, we should be able to find these two files. Now the dot here under .rhosts means that this is a hidden file, and the $home means the home of whatever user it is that you're logged on to. So if I'm logged on as Joe Smith, I should be able to do an ls tac la and see all the hidden files and see a .rhost file sitting out there. Now the host file is pointing to hosts that are allowed to connect to the system. But in this case, we're going to find something interesting. So I'm going to take you out there and show you how you do that. You should be aware that there's also another thing that shows up called etc hosts.equiv. And so let's go take a look at both of those. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Metasploitable 2 just temporarily so we can look at that. Okay, so here's Metasploitable 2. I'm going to log in with MSF admin. MSF stands for Metasploitable Framework. MSF admin for the password. And, I got the login correct. So it wants to know my MSF admin and MSF admin. There we go. I'm going to clear the screen. Now what I'm going to do is an ls tac la. And what that means is list all the files and folders out in long fashion. And A means show me all the hidden folders. So I'm going to hit enter. And sure enough, you can see the rhost there is like the fourth one up. Now there's two things I want to point out to you here. First of all, you can see there that hosts we've got a 10-bit designation for this file. The fact that there's a dash in bit 1 means that it's a file, not a folder. D means directory. That means that it's a folder. And then the next thing that we're looking at is the user, me, MSF admin, has read, write, and execute files. That should not be. So what you can do is you can add these up. These are octal. So if you think about that I have 3-bit binary, my first bit is worth 1 point, my second bit is worth 2 points, my third bit is worth 4 points. I add those up, I get a 7. Now this thing, with the dashes there, I have 3 sets of dashes for the group and 3 sets of dashes for the world. So the way that the writes work is the first dash is showing you if it's a symlink. You can see if you look at the screen output there that I've got an L there. That's a symlink. And you can think of that roughly as a shortcut file to a different area. There are D's there that stand for directory, which is the same thing as a folder. And then if I don't have anything in there, it's a regular plain old file. Well, .rhosts is a hidden file, and it has read, write, and execute permissions for me as the user, and no permissions for the group, which is the next 3 dashes, or for the world, which is the last 3 dashes. Well, what does that mean? It means that the total permissions are 700. So the 3 dashes for the group adds up to 0. Remember that we're using 3-bit binary, and none of those bits are flipped, so that's a 0, goose eggs. And then the 3 dashes for the world adds up to 0. So if I take those all together, the total writes for this file is 700. However, with our shell, the total writes for the file should be 600. We should not have the ability to execute. So what we have here is we have a real problem, and it has been deliberately made unsecure, and that's one of the reasons why it's unsecure, is because I could get in here as a hacker and I could execute away. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cat.rhosts, and this is very interesting. So you can see here that it has 2 plus signs. What does that mean? Well, if I had text in there and I was limiting who could get in, that might be one thing, but these plus signs means anyone can get in. Come, winner take all, just come get it. And so that's really bad. Now let's go look at and see if we can find this Etsy file. So I'm going to do a cd2/etsy/hosts.equiv. It's a weird name for a file, and I think that's a file, so I'm going to go ahead and cat it instead. cat/etsy/hosts.equiv, and hit enter. And lo and behold, look, there's 2 plus signs there, which means come one, come all. Whoever wants to come in and hack me, come on in and hack me. So we have 2 problems. .rhosts has 700 permissions, not 600, as is recommended on the IBM site, and this thing has plus signs in there, which means that we're not limiting anything at all. Y'all just come in and do whatever you need to do. So this is pretty loosey-goosey. Let's see if we can utilize it. So I'm going to do a logout here. I'm going to hit right control to get out of this and minimize it. And you can see here that IBM is telling you this should be set to 600. Read and write for owner only. We're set to read, write, and execute for owner only. Way bad. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this thing. Now we're ready to go ahead and do what we need to do to try to get into the site. We have to install some software, so I'm going to clear the screen here. And we have to install the RSH client. It's not installed by default on Kali, so let's do that. So I'm going to do a sudo apt. I'm going to do a git here, and I don't normally do this. Apt works most of the time with updated software. RSH client is a little bit older, so I'm going to default to just doing an apt-get and then install. And then we want to do rsh-client and hit enter. Type in my Kali password, hit enter, and it goes ahead and installs it. Okay, I've already installed it, so it's saying it's already there, and I had done this before while I was getting ready for this lesson. Now we've got the RSH client here. Now what we're going to do is make use of our login. So we do our login, like that, and we do a TACL, and then we tell it that we want to log into 192.168.1.103, which is our Metasploitable 2 box, and we hit enter. I missed a couple of switches here, so this is fine. We do an rlogin TACL, and then I'm going to come over here and we're going to put in a TACP, and we're telling it to use port 513, and then we want to go ahead and allow it. Oh, and I also want to tell it that I want to log on as root here. And let's see if this works for me. 192.168.1.103. Now we're executing the rlogin command. TACL, root, TAC port is 513. We saw that when we were looking at our nmap output, and then we give it the IP address of the computer that we want to connect to. So we're using rlogin to do this. Boom, there we are. We are in. How do we know we're in? Well, look, we are root at Metasploitable. We are not root at Kali. The other thing that we can do is we can issue some good commands like who am I? And I can see that I am in as root. I can do an ls here, and I can see what the files are that are on there. If I do an ls tac la, I can see the files that are out there, and there's that .hosts file that we had talked about before. Now we have grabbed a shell, this is called a shell, and we are in the Metasploitable box. We are logged on as root, and we could absolutely, completely destroy this computer at this juncture. And so that is why Metasploitable and these ports, 512, 513, and 514, They're called R ports, or R services, remote services. This is why they're so very dangerous, because they don't have the protections associated with them like an SSH is. So as you're going through and you're looking, you're doing an nmap on something like this Metasploitable 2 here, and you see that it shows the 512, 513, and 514 are open. That's a very good sign, which means that remote connection is available to you and you can make use of it. Okay, that's all I've got. I hope you really enjoyed this movie. I just wanted to get you going. We're going to do a lot more with Metasploitable 2. There's a lot of places where we can go and try hacking our way through Metasploitable 2. Talk to you later. Have a great day.